Hashanah, 5782, right. In Hebrew, it's Tuf Shin Pei Bet, if you see Hebrew calendar. The last two letters, Pei is 80, Bet, Aleph Bet 2, Tuf Shin Pei Bet, 5782. And that's where we're at. And you'll see that on Hebrew calendars, and that's the Hebrew year for the whole year. A lot of you know that in Israel, they pretty much for the major holidays have one day of Yontiv up front, one day in the back, and we have 2 and 2 often. But Israel celebrates 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. No matter whether you're secular, Haredi, Orthodox, whatever you are, there's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. So they are having Rosh Hashanah today. The rabbis talk about it at great length in the Talmud, and the Daf Yomi students have been studying some of it lately. It comes in and out. Pure rabbinic tradition, one of my favorites. What do they say? They say, why is it 2 days? They say it's not 2 days. It's one long day. Yom HaRichta. One long day. But recently, so that I knew for a long time, but recently they started talking about how the second day is different than the first day. So pretty much when you have a lot of rabbis discussing something, you're going to have every viewpoint, perspective, and opinion that could possibly be covered. So it is the second day, and in Israel, it is the second day of Rosh Hashanah. That's what they have. So here we are, second day. Yesterday was a big day. We were here, a live stream. 2 services went to Tashlich. This morning, we'll see who comes. Whoever comes, it's Kol Marbet. It's all great. It is great to see all of you. Every person is so important, and whoever's here, we are thrilled about it. Don't worry about numbers. As long as we have 10, we're in pretty good shape. It is good to have 10. So I think we're okay. So we hope you have a wonderful start to the new year. Shana Tova. And Shana Tova Tikatevu, as we say. We should all be written in the book of life for a good year. And we'll all work through that together. So we're going to start out with that song. Lishana Tova Tikatevu. Lishana Tova Tikatevu. Tikatevu. Lishana Tova. All the best for a happy, healthy year. Page 34 in your Machzorim. 34, the High Holiday Siddur is called a Machzor. This is a Siddur, but it's got a special name, a Machzor Siddur. Every Machzor is a Siddur, but not every Siddur is a Machzor. Got that? Right? Yeah, that's the way it is. Page 34, Matovu, how good it is to be alive, to be together, celebrating Rosh Hashanah.
Matovu, halecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu, halecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Page 39, about 6-7 lines down, 6 lines I think, our central declaration of faith is Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Kadesh et Shemcha v'tishrei shemecha v'ganesh et Shemcha ba'olamecha u'vishuatcha tarim v'tag b'yakarneinu. Baruch Adonai v'ganesh et Shemcha ba'rabim.
Amen. Page 42, Psalm 8 is listed as the Psalm of the day for Rosh Hashanah, and the beginning and the end speaks about appreciating God and acknowledging the majesty of the world. In Jewish tradition, today is Hayom Harat Olam. This is the day on which the world was created. We hope that we will be moved by the grandeur of the world. It's a world going through a pandemic and a lot of sadness, but it's a world that has a lot of beauty and a lot of majesty out there between what we see in the skies and what we see around us, and we hope we'll appreciate this planet that is ours. So that is from Psalm 8, a Psalm of the day. Now we turn to page 44 to connect with Psalm 27, which is the penitential Psalm of the season, about 7 lines down or so. Achat Sha'alti.
Achat sha'ati me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Achat sha'ati me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Shifti
Beveit Adonai
kol yemei
Chayai Lachazot Benoam Adonai Olavaker Beheichalo Lachazot Benoam Adonai Olavaker. The end of the psalm encourages us to summon courage, strength, hope in all good things. Let us place our hope in Adonai, others, and ourselves, and let us do all we can to make this a year of bracha v'shalom, blessing and peace for one and for all. Amen. Page 46, Kaddish Yatom. The Mourner's Kaddish gives us a chance to reflect on people who are no longer with us that we love and miss. If anybody wants to rise for the Kaddish to say the words, feel free to do so. Lots of people to remember, and we're going to share them now. 46. Yit Kadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alama, Divra, Chirutei, V'yamlich, Malchutei, V'chayechon, U'v'yomechon, Uvechaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv, v'imaru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivorach, liolam ulomei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal. Shmei dukudsha b'richu. Le'ela, li'ela, mikol, birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechamata, da'amiran, bi'alama, v'imaru, amen. Yehei, shloma, rabba, min shemaya, v'chayim, aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imaru, amen. Oseh, shalom b'mromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imaru Amen. Page 47. We continue with Psukei de Zimra and Baruch She'amar.
Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hosei v'Orishim.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch Omer v'Yosef.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Ozer u'Mekayem.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch Merachem al ha'aretz.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Merachem al ha'briyot.
Baruch Shemo.
Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tov l'Rayah.
Baruch Hu.
Baruch Elad v'Kayam l'Netzach.
Baruch Shemo.
V'Metzil
Baruch Hu. Baruch Shemo. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu.
Yachid Chayalamim Melech Mishubach Ar Ade Ad Shemo Hagadol Baruch Adonai Melech Mechula B'Tishbachot.
Amen. Page 60, one of the most famous Psalms is Psalm 145, Ashrei, in pretty much almost perfect, complete alphabetical order. Page 60.
Ashrei Ashrei B'Techa Od Yalu Chasela
Od Yalu Chasela B'choyim V'cheka V'hala Shemcha Li'olam V'ohem Zechrav Tu V'chaybim Malchus.
Teilat Halayda B'Pi V'Recha V'Shayshim V'Tshel Elam V'Ed V'Anachnu Nevarach Yam Yetav Yelolam Hallelujah.
Page 63, 3 lines up from the bottom of Psalm 150 in the middle. Hallelujah, hallelujah, v'tzil tzalei shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, v'tzil tzalei trua. Kol anshama tehallel ya. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol Anshama Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I want to invite you to turn to page 69, where the Shachri morning service is going to begin. And as you know, we did yesterday, we'll do in Yom Kippur, we highlight the word HaMelech. For Jews who take the season seriously, today brings a great sense of urgency that suddenly we're in court. Here we are, and we're being judged by God and others and ourselves. And we know we're not going to be perfect, but we're hoping we're going to be good enough to get into the book of life. So we start to think, what did I do last year? How was I? What's going on? How's everybody doing? And above all, we believe that God says to us, what can you do? Force my hand to put your name in the book of life and all of Klal Yisrael. And so there's a great sense of urgency that people say, it rests on me, aleinu, it's on us, in order to do the best we can for 10 days to effect tshuva and get into the book of life. So we hope we all feel a sense of urgency that doesn't make us panic-stricken, but a sense of what can I do in a positive way to rise up to the call of the new year and make it happen. So I wish it all for us. Wish you a good year, good things, some tshuva, some forgiveness, some forgetting, and some great sense of renewal of let this year be better than last and the best we've had so far. Page 69, the second paragraph is HaMelech.
Tzadikim baronai laisharim nalvatihila befi sharim tit roma v'divrei tzadikim tibarach uvilshon chasidim titkadash u'kerev kedoshim tidalah uv'makalot revavot amacham Yisrael v'reinai Shimcha Malkeinu b'chodor bador sheken chol v'kol yitzorim lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'lei avoteinu v'avoteinu lehodot lehalel lishabeach levayer leromem leder levarech lehalel lekales al kol divrei shiro b'tishbachot David ben Yishai v'dacham mishkecha yishtabach shim v'chalad Malkeinu Hayal HaMelech HaGadol HaGadosh b'shamayim u'ba'aretz Ki l'chane Adonai Eloheinu v'lei avoteinu v'avoteinu Shver shfachad alav zimra u'zimam shel netzach Ki l'olag v'rat v'fer kedusha u'malchut Berachot v'hodaot mi'atam v'olam Baruch atah Adonai El Melech HaGadol b'tishbachot El ha'araot Adon haniflaot habacher b'shir zimra Melech El Chei Olamim.
Amen. Page 70 at the bottom.
Yit gadal v'yit kadosh shmei rabba.
Amen.
Meyamad yibrach yirotei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechonu v'yamechon u'v'chayedecho beis Yisrael magala u'vizman kariv v'yemaru amen Yehei shmei rabba mevarach li'olam u'amei amaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitroma v'yitnosei v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalah shemir kudesha v'richu li'ela mikol birchada v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran Amen.
Page 71, we celebrate our congregation gathered together for our collective strength and the minyan, and we thank you all, second day especially, for making up that minyan. Page 71 is Baruch Hu.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
The bracha, third line, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Yotzer Or V'rei Choshech Oseh Shalom U'V'rei Et HaKol. May we all enjoy the light and the darkness of this world. May we do what we can to bring harmony to ourselves and to all. Amen.
Amen.
Going to invite you to turn ahead a few pages, page 75, right in the middle in bold print, Words of Holiness by the prophet Isaiah, Kadosh.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivot,
Melech haaretz
Kivod.
Kivodo.
ואפל וחייל הקדוש פרש קדום, ירסים לעומת צרפים, לביתם שבחים ויאמרים.
Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo. They'll broken Motitenu.
המקדש בטובו בכל יום תמיד מעשה בראשית, כאמור להסיר אורים גדולים כי לעולם חסדו. אור חדש
Shal Tzion Tahir, Chadash Shal Tzion Tahir,
אור חדש על
Tzion Tahir, Or Chadash Al Tzion Tahir,
ונזכה
כולנו
מהרה
Lioro.
ונזכה כולנו מהרה ליאורו. ברוך אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Amen. Page 76, we're coming up to Shema Yisrael. So you know that everybody's wearing a talit. Now is a traditional time to reach for the Arba Kanfot, the four corners. We gather them together as a sign of unity for the Jewish people from all over the world, with Israel as our national homeland, and a sign of unity in all ways that we look for it and hope to find it. So with the tzitzit gathered, page 76, V'havienu.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל שורות אתה, בחרת מכל עם ולשון, והקרבתנו לשמך הקדוש, סלה באמת להודות לך, או יחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, בוקר במו ישראל,
Amen.
Shema
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha v'chol mirodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'li בשבתך ובביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרת להיות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבת על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ביום שבוע תשמעו מצוות אשר דרכי ונתתי ישראל. Moshe lemor taber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei b'neihem l'doratan v'nanu al tzitzit hakanaf b'tir t'chelet v'yalachem l'tzitzit moritem oto Uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim v'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem Asher Tzeki Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liolachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Amen V'yatzinu I want to invite you to turn ahead to page 80. Yontiv, everybody. Good to see you. How are we doing so far, okay? Good. Today's, what Hebrew date? Second of Tishrei, right. What's the Hebrew date of Yom Kippur? Bert? 10th, right. Even numbers for the holidays in Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah 1, Yom Kippur 10, Sukkot 5 days later, middle of the month, 1/10/15. So it's one way to remember, kind of even numbers that way. These 10 days are called the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of repentance. In life, anything that is worthwhile on one day is worthy of noting any day. Our birthdays are a big deal once a year. Well, I don't know about now. We get a little older, mixed feelings about that. But certainly little kids, right? And it should be a celebration of life every year. The reality is that in a lot of ways we should celebrate a birthday every day, because especially in this world that has claimed thousands of lives to pandemic and to violence, when we can't take anything for granted, even in our own town we hear of all the murders throughout the neighborhoods. It's terrible. People suddenly steeped into mourning, missing kids, missing loved ones. Every day should be a celebration of life, birth. I'm not sure you want to eat 364 or 5 cakes, though. Trying to watch ourselves. Same thing with tshuva. 10 days we focus on it. But what about the rest of the year? Don't we do things wrong the rest of the year? It's just 10 days we're trying to get our acts together. The reality is we focus on it every day of the year. We do so in the weekday Siddur. Every day during the weekday Amidah, you've seen me do it, you've seen a lot of people do it. there's a paragraph that says, Salach lanu avinu. Please forgive us, O Lord. We do tshuva every day. Not just on Yom Kippur do we beat our hearts, but every day. So why don't we do this every day in a big way? Because sometimes things get lost. You take it for granted. If you do it every day, it becomes commonplace. But for 10 days, we really focus. So I hope we'll all focus on tshuva. There's other people who could probably use a kind word from us, forgive, forget, move on, whatever it might be. But as soon as Yom Kippur's over, guess what? The next day is a good day to do it too. You don't have to wait a whole year in order to say I'm sorry, in order to get your act together. So there's a little bit of tshuva in every day, but these are the 10 big days, and we hope we'll all focus on, again, the urgency of those beautiful messages that try to help us become the best people we want to be. So we are on page 80 now, and we're at the top with Tehillah. Did we do all that already? We up to Torah or we up to Milchamocha? Thank you. Yeah, I forgot where we were. Who knows, I can't read all the Hebrew here, so I got lost. Torah Yisrael's last paragraph, that's why I broke there, because I wanted to tell you what we're doing. We're going to sing Torah Yisrael, and then we're going to invite you to rise for the Amidah, but it's not going to be on the next page. Because of pandemic and shortened services and trying to get a lot of different pieces in, a little bit here, a little bit there, we're actually going to be turning to page 141. I'll announce it again. And we're going to do elements of the Musaf, the second Amidah, which we had yesterday, certainly in the second service, with the Unatana Tokef and some of the highlighted prayers of the day. So just follow me. I'll tell you where the pages are, and don't worry that we're jumping around. Actually, it's a mitzvah to do so. What is this book called? The Machzor. What does that mean? What's a Machzor? Machzor is actually a cycle. We cycle through the book. There are a lot of people who say the Machzor was not intended to do every page. I grew up, we did every letter. You kidding? And a lot of people know that. But it's kind of like a loose leaf kind of deal, where you check this out and check that out, and you cycle through it, and not everything has to be done all the time. So we've been doing more cycling than ever because of pandemic and the nature of things, but it should all be good. It should all be good. So right now, we'll invite you to rise on page 80. If someone's going to open the ark for us on 81, we'll invite you to come join us, and we will do Tzor Yisrael, and then I'll announce the Amidah page. Eric, go ahead. I'll tell you when. Just be in a minute. Good to see you, kid. Open the ark. Okay. Open the ark, please. Amen. Page 141, the Aron Kodesh is open for the Amidah, 141. Rabbeinu lechayim, melech hafetz b'chayim, Rabbeinu b'sefer hachayim, im chayim. Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Amen. B'chesed, b'rachamim rabim, b'rofei cholim, atir asurim, nato, ba'gevurot, midom melach, michamocha, harachamim, urav, berachamim. Amen. Page 143, arguably one of the holiest prayers of the year, is the Unatana Tokaf, when we declare the holiness of this day and wonder what the new year will be like in terms of who shall live and who shall die. Kotevun Uvayom Som Kippur Yom Kippur Yechatemun Rosh Hashanah Yikatevun Uvayom Som Kippur Kippur Yechatemun Shana Yikatevun Uvayom Som Kippur Som Kippur Yechatemun Shashana Yikatevun Page 143, all the way to the left in the margin. Please join me responsively. When we really begin a new year, it is decided. Who shall be truly alive and who shall merely exist? Who shall attain fulfillment in their day and who shall not attain fulfillment in their day? Who shall be pierced by the sharp sword of envy, and who shall be torn by the wild beast of resentment? Who shall be shattered by the earthquake of social change, and who shall be plagued by the pressures of conformity? Who shall be content, and who shall wander in search of satisfaction? Who shall be at ease, and who shall be afflicted with anxiety? Who shall be brought low with futility, and who shall be exalted through achievement? So therefore let us resolve to repent, to pray, to do good deeds, so that we may begin a truly new year. 144 on the right at the top in the Hebrew. Page 145, we continue with the Kedusha. Happy, healthy. Kodesh, Chaba Kodesh, Amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivahot, Melach al haaretz kivado. Mishat Hashem Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Berachamav. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Ahu Na'echad Ushemo Echad. Yimloch Adonai li'olam Elohai Yitzhak Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. I want to invite you to turn to page 154. If we have someone designated to open the Aron Kodesh for Aleinu at this time, we'll invite you up. Yeah? Good. Here we go. Aleinu, is always at the end of services, one of the high holidays. They felt that the message was so important, they wanted to highlight it more. So they placed it in the middle of the Musaf Amidah. And Aleinu means it's on us. So a great question to be inspired to address today is, what's on me this year? What do I have to do? What do I have to try to help others to do? How can I make the world a better place with what I'll try to achieve? Aleinu's 154. Beautiful.
Elu leshabeach ladon hakol latet gedulah yotze breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adamah Shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vigoralenu kechol hamonam. Vanachnu korim umishtachavim umodim. Malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu.
May be seated, everyone. We're going to turn to page 169. If there's people around you feel comfortable putting your arms around, please do so for the blessing of our people, the blessing of our families at the top, the words of the Torah. Ken yehi ratzon. Ken yehi ratzon. Ken yehi ratzon. May the Lord bless you and keep you, give you light, and above all, grant you the gift of peace. And let us say, Amen. Page 169, same page, the penultimate paragraph in the English. Let us read together and pray to be in that good book for all good things. May we and the entire house of Israel be called to mind and inscribed for life, blessing, sustenance, and peace in the book of life. B'Sefer Chaim. Tova v'nikatev v'anecha anachnu v'chol amcha Beit Yisrael. May we and all of Klal Yisrael be inscribed, and then at the end of Yom Kippur be sealed, B'Sefer Chaim, in the book of life, La Tova, for all good, and let us say, Amen. 171, the last paragraph, we join together in Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace for us and everyone. Oseh Shalom, B'Mamav. Imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom. V'yakol Yisrael. Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. Yaseh Shalom. Amen. Who here's been to Israel? Who here wants to go? First time? Who wants to go back? I've yet to meet somebody who went to Israel once and said, no. I really do. I mean, they might say, like, I want to see other places or whatever, but people just have a great positive experience. It's a great thing. Thank God we live in a world with Israel. You know, for 2,000 years, Jews didn't live in a world with Israel. I'm going to talk more about this later in my sermon. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the point is, Israel's going through an interesting time state, like we all are. It's been hard to get there, and it's been hard to get out. You've got to have, like, a certain visa, a certain status, part of a group, permission. You can't just come and go. A lot of us have, like, bought tickets and we couldn't use them, and they promised next week, next month. Right now, the latest is, Steve, what's the latest?
Can't get there.
Can't get there now, but they said maybe
October.
Maybe October, right. Maybe October means maybe November.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Maybe next year. Maybe when the Mashiach comes.
You and I will meet there.
Right, the Mashiach should come though today though, so that could happen. Hopefully we'll all meet on the streets of Jerusalem. It's amazing. So anyway, though, but Israel's doing great. You know, she's leading the world with vaccines and getting ahead of things and doing her best. And she's got her challenges like we do, but she's still a beautiful country and always a beautiful country. And so for our second day, Rosh Hashanah, Israel Bond Appeal, I'm so honored to call upon Rachel Fox, who went to Israel this summer and had a great time. And Rachel's going to be our bond chair this year.
It's a page and a half, not just one page.
Maybe bring the microphone a little closer to you. I don't know if that one's working. Is
It is.
Yeah, okay, good.
No. Can you hear me now? I got a thumbs up back there. Okay. For those of you who do not know me, now you do, but my name is Rachel Fox. My husband Steve and I have two girls, Brenna, who will become a bat mitzvah in November, and Alyssa, who is 10. We've been members of BTBJ for 6 years. I grew up in Pikesville, Maryland, and for those of you who are not familiar with the area, it's a very Jewish suburb of Baltimore. I grew up attending a modern Orthodox synagogue until moving to Pennsylvania about 16 years ago. My mom, dad, and brother have all been to Israel a couple of times, but for one reason or another, I have never been. That is until I start seeing pictures of other moms traveling to Israel with a group called Momentum, or Birthright for Moms. I knew this was the trip for me, and then COVID. Almost 2 years of planning, this past July, my group was lucky enough to be allowed into Israel to tour this beautiful country. The anticipation of my first trip to Israel was incredible. I would be traveling with over 100 Jewish mothers with, get this, no kids, no husbands. The entire trip was planned and scheduled for me, and all I had to do was show up and be on time. When I came home from this adventure, my friends and family called me and asked how was the trip, what was my favorite part. I had no words. In fact, it took me almost 3 weeks to be able to talk about this trip without tears coming to my eyes. This sounds a little cheesy, but I felt at home, I felt safe, I felt welcomed, and very sweaty if you've ever been to Israel in the summer. One of the most exciting parts of this experience for me was knowing that Steve, who has also never been to Israel, and I plan to take our family in the spring, if we can get there. I cannot wait to share this sense of belongingness with them. Almost 2 weeks traveling this country with women who I had just met was transformative. Each day was better than the next. A group of Israeli moms who had all been in the IDA for at least 20 years joined us on our adventures, and they were amazing. Something that really stood out to me was a conversation I had with one of them on the last night of the trip. With tears in her eyes, she said, "We as Israeli Jewish love Israel. It's our home." She continued by telling me that she never realized there were other Jewish women around the world, especially in the United States, who were not religious, but who loved and cared for Israel as much as she did. This struck me, and I think of this conversation with Segal often. How can we help Israel and let everyone who lives there know that we love them, we need them to be there, and the existence of Israel is essential? When Rabbi asked me to give this appeal to you all today on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I thought, how can I get up on the bima and ask my friends during such an uncertain time in America to give money to Israel? My second thought was, how can I not? If you have been to this beautiful country, you probably get it. If you have not, the second you step out of the airport, you will. Israel needs us as much as we need Israel. So whether you have a lot to give or a little, it doesn't matter. There are so many crazy things going on in our world, but I ask you to please give whatever feels right for you and your family. There's a pledge card in everyone's high holiday packet. This year we're asking that you send all completed cards directly to the bond appeal office with the envelope provided. If I learned one thing on this trip, it's that Israel loves us for one reason only, because we're Jewish. There's a sign in the Tel Aviv airport that sums it up for me perfectly. Welcome to Israel. Your life will never be the same. Shema Tova.
Another hand for Rachel, man. Rachel, first of all, we're so thrilled you got a chance to go on a unique trip. Not everybody gets a chance to go on a trip like you did. And we're perhaps even more thrilled that you're going back again with your husband and the kids, and look forward to that. It should be the first of many trips to Israel. Lots of connections. We've been supporting Israel. Israel's been supporting us in so many different ways, and we thank you for being a part of the midst of reminding us to do what we can to support her. As Rachel said, cards are in your bags. There's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of ways to give gifts to do it, and it can be very meaningful. So we hope that Israel will have a special place in your hearts. And again, Rachel, thank you for being our Israel Bond Chair in 5782. We are now on page 96. It is time for Seder Hotzat Torah, second day of Rosh Hashanah. We are going to open the Ark and take out 2 Sifrei Torah and read as we did yesterday, page 96. Hi, guys. Up there, I'll tell you when to open it. for a minute. We invite you to rise Nalakum for the opening of the Aron Kodesh. Torah. Okay. So, Elohim. What's it take to tell it, guys? Not to go very far. Stand right here. And Ken will take the other one. Okay. Joe, can you close the arms, please? Right, guys, stand right here on the table.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh V'Norah Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Adonai Yitzivu, Neromema Shemo Yachdav. Adonai Ha'yidula, Ya'yivura v'ha'tiferet, v'ha'netzach v'ha'hod. Yecho b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, Yecho b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Adonai ha'mamrach lach, Yamid na'aseh lecho lerosh romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu l'adom raglav kadosh hu romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishtachavu lehakodsho Yadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Nala Shevet, you may be seated. Page 103, you'll see the Torah reading for second day of Rosh Hashanah. For all of you familiar with the way we read the Torah, sometimes we got to roll a long way. Like coming up in about 3 weeks, we're going to have to roll from the very end to the very beginning when Simchas Torah, when we finish the Torah and start again. That can take a little while. Bert usually takes care of that himself with the help of others sometimes, and it's done for us, but that can be a long roll. From yesterday to today, how far do we have to roll? Not at all. Yesterday we read Genesis 21, the story about the birth of Isaac. Today is Genesis 22. You can't get much closer, guys, really. If you complain about rolling the Torah from yesterday to today, you probably shouldn't be a Torah roller. But today we're going to read Genesis 22. It's on page 103. It's the story that always touches us deeply of Akedat Yitzchak, the binding and the sacrifice of Isaac. And we are told that God tests Abraham, and he tells him to sacrifice Isaac, and Abraham is the loyal servant who rushes to do so. And at the very last minute, God stays his hand and says, I don't want human sacrifice, but just deeds of kindness and love. You know, ancient peoples, according to history, there were peoples who sacrificed people, sacrificed kids, and this was kind of perhaps our landmark place to understand that we shouldn't do that. So we learned it, and Abraham learned it, and Isaac learned it. It's a very complicated story, and I'll give you one of the greatest complications. The way we read the story, Isaac survives. God says, Abraham, don't. I know that you were loyal and you would have done this, but I don't want you to. I want Isaac to be the next generation and the second forefather and go on. But there is another opinion that says Isaac doesn't survive, because the Torah goes at great pains, and I'm going to read it in just a moment, to say that Abraham and Isaac walked together to go to Har Moriah, which a lot of people believe is where the current Kotel is. The Temple Mount is where it was. And when it was all said and done, the Torah says that Abraham returned home. And people are going, what do you mean Abraham returned home? Where'd Isaac go? How come they didn't go together? Some people say, Isaac didn't make it. If you're like me, you can tend to run late sometimes. All right, what are you going to do? Life, you know? I get that great attribute, not from my wife who was early to everything, Zichron Racha, but from the Grateful Dead who were late for everything. But nobody ever complained, so it worked out well. There's a story told that the rabbi was teaching in the yeshiva. He was teaching the story. And he gets to the point where he says that Isaac was on the altar and Abraham lifted up the knife, and he could feel the tension in the air. And one of the young students started to cry out loud. And the rabbi said, why are you crying? He said, because Isaac's about to get killed. And then maybe there'll be no more Judaism. The rabbi said, yeah, but if you know the story, just in the nick of time, Malach Adonai, an angel of the Lord, shows up and tells Abraham to stop. The child could not be assuaged. He keeps on crying. And the rabbi said, you know that it works out well. Why are you still crying? He goes, because Rebbe, what if the angel would have come late with that message? And he wouldn't have been there in time. The Rebbe said, God and angels come on time, but the lesson is for us, when it's important, try to be on time, because you never know what's at stake when you wind up showing up a little bit late. So it's part of the powerful story. Genesis 22, an amazing chapter, lots of questions. We talk about it often, we'll do so. 3 aliyot, starting on page 103. We'd like to invite Jennifer and Solomon Matisoff to come join us. Guys are here? You're here. Hey, it's not just you, it's you. You're representing the family. Talmud Harishonah. Okay, I'm going to read it. Yeah. Did you want to read? No. I'll take care of this. I'll do this. I'll get it. All right, just do the like that one. Good to see you. Love to the family. Everybody okay? I'm telling you, your kids had to cut his ponytail off and give it to him. Hold on, let me just find it. Right here. Okay. Here you go, Jerry. Go ahead.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Vayihi achar advarim ha'eleh v'Elohim yisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni vayomer kach et bincha et yichidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha l'eretz Moriah v'aleu sham li'olah al achad ha'arim asher amar elecha vayashkem Avraham baboker vayachavosh et chamaro vayikach et shnei narav ito v'yet Yitzchak beno vayivakatz eolah vayacham v'elech el hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim.
Baruch Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et Torato. Asher natan lanu et Torah emet v'chayei olam natav v'tilchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach love to the whole family. Shalom Tov. Our second Aliyah, we'd like to invite Michael to come join us. Do you know what verse it is? I don't have a book in front of me. 4. We continue with verse 4, Bayom HaShlishi. You're going to come over here.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Bayom HaShlishi, Vayisa Avraham ben Einav, Vayarta Makom me'rachov, Vayomer Avraham el narav, Shuvu lachem po im hachamor, v'ani v'anar nechad ko, v'nishtachaveh, v'nashuva alechem. Vayikach Avraham et atzeh ha'olah, vayasem Yitzchak beno, vayikach biado, et ha'esh v'yera ma'achelet, vayachu shnehem yachdav. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham avi, Vayomer avi, Vayomer hineni v'ni, Vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'itzim, v'he'aseh li olah. Vayomer Avraham Elohim yerlo aseh li olah bini, Vayochu shnehem yachdav.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natav b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Love everyone. We are now up to verse 9, and we would like to invite for our third Aliyah from our first Sefer Torah, Beth and David Schwartzman, come join us. At this point, Abraham and Isaac are arriving at the place for the sacrifice. There you go.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yeah, sure. No need to. Let's see. Right here. Amen. Vayavo el makom asher mar lo Elohim. Vayiven sham Avraham and Amizbeach. Vayaroch et ha'itzim. Vayakod et Yitzchak beno. Vayasem oto ala Mizbeach mimal ha'itzim. Vayishlach Avraham et yado. Vayikach et ha'machelet lishchor et beno. Vayikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim. Vayomer Avraham Avraham. Vayomer hineni. Vayomer al tishlach yadacha al anar ve'al taslo milma ki ata yadati ki yirei Elohim ata v'lo asachta et binchad yichidecha mimeni vayisa Avraham et einav vayar v'nei ha'il achar nechaz basfat b'karnav vayelach Avraham vayikach et ha'il vayalel li'olah tachat beno vayikra Avraham Shema makom ahu Adonai yireh asher yamer hayom v'har Adonai yireh vayikra malach Adonai el Avraham shenit mishamayim vayomer binishpati neum Adonai ki an asher asita et adavar hazeh v'lo asachta et bincha yichidecha ki varech avarechecha Varba arbet zaracha kechofei hashamayim v'chacho asher asfat hayam vayirash zaracha et shar oivav v'yitbarchu v'zaracha kol goyei haaretz eker asher shamata b'koli vayashav Avraham el narav vayakumu vayachtu yachtav el be'er shava vayeshav Avraham b'be'er shava Vayihi Acharei hadvarim haeleh, vayugad liAvraham lemor, hinei yalda milka gam hi, banim lenachor achicha, et utz becharo, v'et buz achiv, v'et kemuel avi aram, v'et kesev v'et chazo, v'et pildash v'et hilat, v'et betuel, uv'tuel yaladet rivka, shemona ele yalda milka, lenachor achi Avraham, ufilak shoshema ruma, vatelet gam hi et talach v'et kacham, v'et tachash, v'et macha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tzofenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Have a good one. We offer Mishaberach Lacholim. Please keep in your prayers and thoughts people who are in need of a refuah shlema mamash, of a complete and speedy recovery, as we say, Mishaberach Avatena Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, V'Yimatena Sarivka Rachel Leah, Varek V'Rape Kol Achlim Ha'eleh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Melrachim Eleim L'Chazikam B'Rachatam V'Yishlach Lahem, V'Yimhei Refuah Shlema Shemayim, Refuat Nefesh, Refuat Aguf, Yom HaZikaron Hi Milizok, Hashpagaz Mankari V'Nomar Amen. We wish good health for everybody, those who are sick, those who are really sick, those who are suffering, those who are in hospitals, those who would like to be here today, but because of health issues they can't make it. We do all we can to pray for them, tell them we're thinking about them, and we'll do what we can to help them along life's path to better days for us all. Amen. Okay. Those who are lifting the first Sefer Torah, come join us. Yamod Hagba Tamod Hagolelet. We invite the congregation to rise for the lifting of our first Sefer Torah. Hi there. How are you? Have you done this before? Yes, sir. Beautiful. Got it. It's okay. Turn around. That's it. Beautiful. Let me sit right here.
I have one.
Okay. You're looking. Let me know if God is upset with you. Okay, first go take this one. That's called God. Beautiful help to my pleasure. All your help and check what it's about. You guys can have a seat. Nala Shevet, you may be seated, everyone. So the story of Abraham and Isaac is read, and again, it's so interesting how people argue whether Isaac really survived or not. There's a lot in there. We're now going to read from the second Sefer Torah, as we did the Maftir of yesterday. It's on page 106, and it comes to us from the book of Numbers, chapter 29, the declaration of Rosh Hashanah, on the 7th month, on the first day. Yamod Maftir. Marty? I think this is you. You guys are doing the next one too, right? Excellent. See, something to change it to lower. That's great. Good to see you guys. Happy health. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahed.
Baruch atah Adonai noten
Sofu Abashamen, Shlosha Esronim Lapar, Shni Esronim La'ayo, Yisabran Echad La'ikeves La'echad, L'shivat HaGavasim, Busiri Simachad Chata, L'chaper Aleichem, Milvad Olam HaChodesh, Michata, Milvad Tamid Milchatan, Yiskehem HaMishpat, L'rech Nichot Nishem Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet haolam nafach etchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yashko to the canon for reading to all of our aliyot, and that is the maftir for today. We're now going to tie the second Sefer Torah, and we're going to invite Lori and Evan to do that with us again. Nalakum, please rise. Yamod Hagmabia Tamod Hagolelet.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael.
Lori, grab the top hats. Tighten it again, just like before.
Torah, 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 Tzivah lahu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivah lahu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivah lahu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tzivah lahu Moshe.
Enjoy. Nice, thank you. Nala Shevet. Great, and again, what a joy to be back in the shul, to see the Sifrei Torah again, and to come and take a look. They seem to be doing pretty good, huh? Not too dusty. They're doing all right. We're on page 111. The Haftarah for the second day of Rosh Hashanah comes to us from a message from the prophet Yirmiyahu, and Marty Polinsky is going to chant this beautiful Haftarah for us today.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nviim tovim, v'ratzav b'divreihem enemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Ko amar Adonai matzah chen b'midbar, am shridei charev, haloch lahargio Yisrael. Merachok Adonai nira li, ve'ahavad olam ahavtich, al kain mishachti chased. Od evnech v'nivnei b'tulat Yisrael. Od tadi tu payich v'yatzat bimchol mesachakim. Od TV chiramim dev harei shomron, natu notim v'chileluhu, ki yesh yom karuhu notzrim b'har Ephraim, kam kumu v'na'ale Tzion, El Adonai Eloheinu, ki cho amar Adonai, ranu li'akov shimcha, v'tahalu b'rosh hagoyim, hashmiu halalu ve'imru, hosha Adonai et amcha, Eit she'erit Yisrael, Hineni mevi V'otam eretz tzafon v'kabtzim miyorketei haaretz bam iver ufiseach hara yoledet yachdav kahal gadol yashuvu hena bivchi yavo uvetachanunim ovilem olichem al nachalei mayim b'derech yashar lo yikashlu ba ki hayiti liYisrael le'av Ephraim b'chavrihu shimu devar Adonai goyim v'hagidu va'i mimerchak v'imru mezarei Yisrael yakabtzenu ushmaro keroe edro Kifada Adonai et Yaakov uge'alo miyad chazak mimenu uva'u v'rinenu bimrom Tzion v'naharu el tuv Adonai al dagan al tirosh ve'al yitzhar ve'al b'nei Tzion uvakar v'hayata nafsham kegan raveh v'lo yosifu l'da'ava od ahaz tismach betula b'machol Vachorim uzkenim yachdav v'hafachte evlah l'sason v'nichamtim v'simachtim migonam v'riveti nefesh hakohanim dashen v'amei Etuvi yisba'u ne'um Adonai Ko amar Adonai Kol berama nishma Nehi bechi tamrumim Rachel mevake'al habaneha Me'ana lehinachem al banecha ki einenu Ko amar Adonai min kolech mi bechi ve'einayich midima ki yesh sachar lifulatech Ne'um Adonai V'shavu me'eretz oyev V'yashtikva la'acharitech Ne'um Adonai V'shavu vanim ligvulam Shamoa shamati Ephraim mitnoded Yisartani vayivaser Ke'egel lo lumad Hashivenu mi'ashuvah Ki ata Adonai Elohai Ki acharei shuvi nichamti Ki acharei hivadei Sahafakti al yarech Boshti v'gamam nichlamti Ki nasati cherpat nurai Havein yakir li Ephraim Im yelet shashuim al Tzion ki hiveit chayenu v'la'aluvat nefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu baruch atah Adonai
Ushma.
sameach Tzion b'vaneh
Amen.
Samchenu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha uv'malchut Beit David Meshichecha b'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu al kisa lo yeshev zor v'lo yinchalu aracherim et kevodo v'v'shem kodecha nishbata lo shelo yichbene ro l'olam va'ed baruch atah Adonai
Ushma.
Magehin David
Amen.
Al HaTorah v'al HaAvodah v'al HaNevi'im v'al Yom HaZikaron hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu lichavod ultifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu modim lach u'mevarechim otach Yitbarach Shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid l'olam va'ed Udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad Baruch atah Adonai
Ushma.
Melech al kol haaretz Mekadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron
Amen. Marty Yashkov, thanks for beautiful Haftorah, second day of Rosh Hashanah. Jeremiah, be very proud of you. Chanted his message well. Great. Page 119. People wait all year to hear Tikiyat Shofar, the blowing of the shofar. There's a lot of traditions about the shofar. We've been studying some of them in Daf Yomi, the Talmud, lately. According to one tradition, do you know how many notes each day of Rosh Hashanah you're supposed to hear at least? I heard the answer. Said that?
100.
100, yeah. There's a tradition to hear 100 notes each day. And on page 119, where you will see the shofar blowing service, the mitzvah is lishmoa kol shofar, to listen to the shofar. It's really interesting. Perhaps there should be 2 brachot. What's missing here if the whole thing is just listening? The bracha's here for listening. Lishmo kol shofar, right. But isn't that like step 2? Right. Shouldn't there be a bracha for blowing the shofar? Because if Jeff doesn't blow the shofar, who's going to hear it? Right? Tree falls in the forest, no one's there. So it's interesting. The Talmud talks about a lot of these brachot that they don't cover everything. They cover either the essential feature of the mitzvah or one of the features. And I'll give you another big one coming up soon. On Sukkot for 7 days, except for Shabbat, we're going to bench lulav and etrog in the morning. And what is the bracha? Baruch atah Hashem, you know? Al nitilat lulav, on the taking of the lulav. Etrog's sitting there going, about me. About me. I thought I was important here. I'm one of the Arba Minim, the 4 species. I'm the fruit of the goodly tree. Without me, you don't have a complete set. How come you're blessing the lulav and not the etrog? So these questions come up. It's really interesting. What's really nice is that we all know what's going on. We know that when we say a bracha, it might not address every part of the mitzvah, but the whole thing is there. You can't listen unless it's blown. No one ever walks around with a lulav without an etrog. So it all comes together really well. But when you read brachot, it's interesting to see blessings. What it focuses on is everything covered, is a part of it covered, or would you have covered something else that you think is more of a major feature? So that's a couple thoughts about brachot. On page 119, we are now ready for Seder Tzkat Shofar. Is Jeff back? Amazing. Shows up every Rosh Hashanah. It's incredible, like clockwork. Jeff yesterday was beautiful, and today will be no doubt the same. So we're going to invite those of you who are willing and able to rise and take a look at page 119. And Jeff is going to start with the brachot over the blowing and the listening of the shofar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh.
Amen. Tkiya. Shvarim Trua. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shvarim Trua. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shvarim Trua. Tkiya. Listening to the shofar, the Torah commands us to blow the shofar, but later Jewish tradition understood the essential mitzvah was to hear the shofar. That is why the bracha reflects that. What is important is that the shofar affects us, is that it touches our souls, and it moves us to rise up to the messages and the voices that call out to us to be the best human being that we can possibly be. Tkiya. Shvarim. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shvarim. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shvarim. Tkiya. On this day of Yom HaZikaron, tradition tells us that God begins to judge and he ascends the throne of judgment on Rosh Hashanah. But when the people of Israel are all standing in judgment and listen to the shofar, we are told that the music moves the Holy One, blessed be He, to be filled with mercy, and moves from the throne of judgment to the throne of compassion. May we all be judged with compassion by God, others, ourselves, our family, and friends on these high holy days. 119, last paragraph, Tkiya. Trua. Tkiya. Trua. Tkiya. Tkiya. Trua. Tkiya Gedola. Jeff, thank you so much. What a beautiful shofar blowing. So, are we ready to send him home for the season yet?
No.
How many more notes does he have?
Need it for Yom Kippur.
How many more notes? Sometimes we get confused. We know that we hear the shofar a lot on Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes we think it's the same on Yom Kippur. Actually, Yom Kippur, it's one note, Tkiya Gadol, at the end, and we'll look forward to Jeff. Jeff, you guys don't know this, but every year I send his passport to the State Department and validate it for 10 days. You can't go anywhere until after Yom Kippur. And we're so appreciative of all your efforts and your beautiful shofar blowing. We'll see you at the end of Yom Kippur. Page 121, we want to return the Sifrei Torah to the Ark. We're going to open the Ark at this time and sing Yahalaloo. Great to see you. Get up in the Ark.
Yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Tiniskav Shemo Levajo,
Odu Alaretz,
Vishamayim, Vayarem, Kerem Milamos, Tiva Lekol, Tiva, Livni Yisrael.
Yushar. Adonai. Beautiful, may be seated, everyone. The opening question of my thoughts today for you are this. Did you ever disagree with someone you loved? Of course you have. We all have. Love may be a many-splendored thing, but it's a complicated institution too. We love many people, and we love them in different ways. But disagreements and arguments, even deep anger, may creep into that love from time to time. The bottom line, hopefully, is that the love we share with others is stronger than the disagreements, and at the end of the day, love prevails. Loving another under the best circumstances can have its trials. Loving a country can be a mixed and complicated notion indeed. How do we feel about the modern state of Israel? Rachel, how do you feel about it? Oh, you told us. I forgot. I'm sorry. Since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 of the Common Era, the Jews lived for nearly 2,000 years without a nation-state to call their own. They lived all over the world in what we call galut, or diaspora, under various conditions. At times, their host countries welcomed them, even treated them well. Often not as equal citizens, but well enough. At other times, the Jews lived under great oppression and suffering. They were exiled from many European countries during the Middle Ages. They were barely tolerated by others. For example, the Jews in the Pale of Settlement who were under Russian control in the late 19th century. Just think about Fiddler on the Roof. Then in the 20th century, European Jews wound up falling under Nazi persecution. They endured Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, in November 1938. They were then herded into ghettos, then to concentration camps, then to death camps, where eventually 6 million Jews and 5 million others wound up decimated in what we call the Holocaust. How could the world, including the United States, allow this to happen? How could humanity act so inhumanly towards each other? What were the Jewish people to do? The story of modern Zionism in Israel dates back to the late 19th century to a courtroom in Paris, and I'm sure a lot of you know this history and know this story. There, a French lieutenant named Alfred Dreyfus, a Jew, was railroaded on charges of espionage against France. Despite the overwhelming lack of evidence, Dreyfus was convicted on December 22, 1894, and sentenced to life imprisonment. This incident on its own may have joined just a long list of anti-Semitic incidents over the course of the previous 1,000 years. Had it not been for the fact that a young Austrian journalist covered the story and witnessed the trial and the aftermath, it changed his life. His name was Theodor Herzl. After the trial, Herzl heard the mobs chant the following threat in the streets: "Death to the Jews." Herzl, who had been hoping for modern Jewish emancipation, wondered, why are the people yelling death to the Jews? They should be yelling death to that Jew, because he's the one who's guilty, not all of us. So Herzl concluded that anti-Semitism was too ingrained in the human consciousness to ever allow the Jews to move beyond its consequences. Therefore, if Jews were ever to be safe, what was required was a state of their own. And the rest is history. Herzl's vision paved the way for the establishment of the modern Jewish state. The hope of many was that the existence of Israel would address and combat many issues, including anti-Semitism, and it would provide a homeland and a refuge for the Jewish people and others who had just witnessed the annihilation of 1/3 of its world population with the death of the 6 million. There were about 18 million Jews alive in the world at that time. I wonder, what would Herzl say about the recent move by Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream to abandon their sales in the occupied territories as of the end of 2022? Who's aware of that story, been following it? It's been a big story. When I heard about that, I was moved to speak about that today. Israel joined the League of World Nations 73 years ago, hoping in many ways to become a country like others. In many ways she is, in many ways she's not. She has a flag, a national anthem, a military, but the anti-Zionists and anti-Semites, Jews will always be Jews, Christ killers, seekers of world domination, controlling the economy and world power, etc. When she won territory in wars that were not of her making, she had to sue for peace and return land as part of the agreement. Maps made in many countries do not name Israel, but rather read Palestine. And a long-standing debate is that to much of the world, Israel was not and is still not given the ability to name her own capital. Jerusalem is Israel's chosen capital, but many countries around the world do not recognize that. Instead, major countries' embassies are in Tel Aviv. It wasn't until December of 2017 that the United States under President Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and built a new embassy there. Arab athletes around the world have refused to compete against Israeli athletes, preferring to forfeit their matches instead. I hope you got a chance to watch some of the recent Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics. So moving, delayed a year, but so worth watching, so inspiring. Algerian judoka athlete Fedi Nourine and his coach were suspended because he refused to fight against, combat and compete against an Israeli athlete. He's done it before. His position is consistent on the Palestinian issue, and if it cost him that absence from the Olympic Games, then God will compensate, he said. Think about all the things, all the terrible things that have been done in the name of God throughout history. Through it all, Israelis have expressed a multitude of views about the Palestinian people, from extremely leftist to rightist, as you all know. Some are in favor of a two-state solution. Others prefer a one-state solution. Some Israelis believe that the entire region belongs to the Jewish people because God promised it to our ancestors, Abraham and Moshe in the Torah, and others believe that we should do anything we can, give away land, give away this, that, just to achieve peace and settle the matter. To this day, the cycle of violence continues, as we witnessed back in May, a 2-week rekindling of the violent tension with Gaza. To this day, the world has not proved successful in finding the right formula to create a permanent ceasefire and solution. And people on all sides saddle blame on the other side. That's the way it goes throughout history. The Palestinians decry that Israel stole their land in the wars of 48, 67, others leaving them living in a permanent refugee situation in Gaza and the West Bank. They claim that Israel is occupying their land, and they refuse to accept that condition. Israel decries that back in 1947, she accepted the UN partition plan, but the Arabs rejected it and instead attacked her as soon as she became a state. Though suffering many casualties over the years, not only in battle but also in terrorist attacks, Israel has persevered and survived, probably because of necessity. She can't afford to lose a war. She blames the continuation of violence in those Palestinian factions like Hamas, who include the destruction of Israel in their charters. The bottom line is that too many people are at odds over the issue and believe, based on theological perspectives, they are right and the other side is wrong. Life as we know it is rarely that simple, and the Israeli-Palestinian controversy has claimed too many lives for too many years from all sides without an end in sight. Leaving aside the discussion of who is more right and what should be done, I want to ask this question. Can Jews like ourselves, Rachel, can I use you for example? You did such a great job today. You stood up before us. You said, I just went to Israel. I'm taking my family. I loved it. Can't wait to go again. What if you heard Rachel talking to someone, or you were talking to her, and she decided to offer a critique against some Israeli policy, whatever it might be? Now, you heard of her Avat Zion, her love of Israel. Would you suddenly conclude, would you call her an anti-Semite, an anti-Zionist, because she dared to criticize Israel? This is the question that I want to address with you today, because it has widespread implications. In other words, can you love Israel and still be critical of her behavior? Ben and Jerry, from what I understand, I'm not a big part of the business world, but I don't think they own the company anymore. They sold it, it belongs to somebody else. So, they could say it's not theirs. But they issued the following statement. We believe it is inconsistent with our values for Ben & Jerry's ice cream to be sold in the occupied Palestinian territory. The move appeared to offer support for the BDS movement, which calls for the boycott, divestiture, and sanctions movement that puts pressure on Israel and her economy in the name of the Palestinian cause. The company disagreed by stating that they were not leaving Israel as a whole, just for marketing in the territories. They said, we will stay in Israel. We do not believe this is an act of anti-Semitism. In fact, we believe that this is really an act of Jewish values, and we want to advance the concept of justice and human rights, which are part of Jewish life. Boy, do you have a headache yet? I do. It's complicated. It's complicated. Just like when you're upset with someone you love, and you might really get angry, do you stop sometimes and say, geez, I love this person so much. Why am I so angry? Why can't we work this out? In response to Ben & Jerry's move, the state of Florida proclaimed they will not tolerate discrimination against Israel and will not stand idly by supporting the BDS movement. They have placed Ben & Jerry's on their list of scrutinized companies that boycott Israel. Florida said they wanted to send a message to all of corporate America. Who would have thought that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict would spill over into a pint of Cherry Garcia? Two of the core matters I want to explore with you now are the issues of sensitivity and vulnerability. Sensitivity is defined as the ability of an organism to react to signals. Sometimes we define people as overly or too sensitive. Other times we complain, someone isn't sensitive enough to my feelings and who I am. We're all sensitive in life. We all have our different degrees and our issues that really move us and the ones we don't care about as much. But all of us know what it's like to have words and actions coming our way that we suddenly stop and we get our backs up. How does sensitivity play a role in this issue? For the past 2,000 years, Jews have been wanderers and strangers among the countries of the world. They've been persecuted, driven from their homes, hardly knowing day to day if they were going to be accepted or not and live there tomorrow. Jews have often proven very sensitive to the way the world has treated us because history has proven that our existence and our well-being has often clung to a thread, depending on the mood of the world, letting the unthinkable happen, the death of 6 million. Let's go back to Fiddler on the Roof. What a great movie. As we watch with Nachas the marriage of Tevye's eldest daughter, Tzeitel, to Mottel the tailor, And if you want to get up and sing and dance, go right ahead. With horror, we suddenly watch the party interrupted by a pogrom. When it's over, instead of voicing his anger, his indignation over the occurrence, what does Tevye quietly do? He reacts to everyone and he says, okay, let's just clean up and go home. Tell me something. If a simcha you had, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, wedding, would have been interrupted by violence like that? Would you have just stood by, watched it, said, thank God they didn't kill me, let's just clean up and go home? I don't think so. We are different people. We are different Jews. We are proud to live fiercely and determinedly as American Jews. Tevye and the people of Anatevka didn't enjoy the same reality and luxury. Who was Tevye going to complain to? The Russian magistrate? They were all anti-Semitic. In fact, he got along with the guy. Remember the movie? And the guy told him the pogrom was coming, and he tried to downplay it. He said, it's just a little thing. It's not a big thing. We would never tolerate that. We'd call the police. We'd do everything we could to move it along. Grateful for the times of peace and stability, as fragile as they were, Jews were forced to deal with the often hatred and upheaval that came their way. It wasn't until 1948 Israel came into being and our success in America developed that we became to feel more secure after 2,000 years of widespread persecution and suffering. But you know, even here in America, we've had a mixed experience. We haven't continued to know anti-Semitism despite being equal citizens. The ADL, B'nai B'rith, Jewish country clubs, similar groups, were all founded to give us a home and to protect us. The ADL is a leading anti-hate organization. It was founded in 1913 in response to an escalating climate of anti-Semitism and bigotry in the country. Today, the ADL is the first call when anti-Semitic acts occur, but they also argue that they are a global leader in exposing extremism and delivering anti-bias information and fighting hate online for Jews and anyone, everyone who may suffer bias, discrimination, or hate. If you ever go down to Marietta, Georgia, some of you may have been there, might go there, it's not too far from Atlanta, you will learn about the Leo Frank case. Leo Frank, early in the century, was an innocent Jewish man accused of the murder of a young 13-year-old Christian girl named Mary Fagan. Frank was framed, convicted, and then he was lynched. Hung by an angry mob. In the past 100 years, Jews have contended with all sorts of insidious expressions of anti-Semitism, openly and more subtly. Back in October of 2018, remember that? Seems like forever ago, but it was only really a few years, and we all were paying attention then. The Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh lost 11 innocent daveners one Shabbos morning. Since then, other incidents have occurred. The Jewish community and sympathetic citizens, good humans, have decried these incidents, but more have occurred in today's America. Before pandemic, BTBJ, along with shuls across the nation, hired armed security forces to be present on our grounds. We have 2 guards outside our front door today. We've seen them for years. I think all of us are proud that we're free to do so and we feel a little bit safer, but also there's a piece of us like, this is what America has come to, that we have to have a gun outside the door to make sure that we're okay. That happens to other Jews. It happens to Tevye. It happens out of Tevye. It happens to Germany. It doesn't happen in America. Guess what? It's happened in America. Many of us lamented the need for us to defend ourselves, but I'm glad we can. Sensitive? Yeah, we could be, and justifiably so. We've witnessed how but a few words and actions have led to violence and death. There were no more secure citizens in the world than the Jews of Berlin in the 1930s, and the Holocaust changed that, if not forever, for a long time, way past our lives. Unfortunately, the contemptible mistreatment of people, Jews and others, continues to plague our world through this day. When non-Jews like Henry Ford throughout history, Louis Farrakhan, college professors make statements that are covertly or outright anti-Semitic in tone, yeah, we get sensitive. We cry out. How could that professor say that? They have to be even-handed. They have to be fair. How could this person write that? But what happens when the alleged attacker is one of us? What happens when fellow Jews question Israel's policies towards the Palestinians, like Ben & Jerry's and others? What happens when Jews march with Palestinian sympathizers in the streets of Philadelphia during the Israel Independence Day parade? I'm sure a lot of you were with me and with us over the many years we've been together. We watched Palestinians come out with flags to disturb the parade, and we saw Jews there proudly saying, we're on their side. Oh, it's hard. It's tough. We're trying to celebrate. We got our little kids with us, the Hebrew school, and there were times when I was moved to want to participate in violence because you get so crazy about being attacked. Sensitivity, yeah. An initial reactive move is to often label all parties anti-Semitic and anti-Zionistic. Even Jews who do this. We have criticized the United Nations many times over the years for the way they decided issue was ruling against Israel and in favor of the Palestinians. But Israel's sensitivity has often risen to an alarming level because of the multitude of attempts of hateful Palestinians to infiltrate Israel and wreak havoc on her society and her citizens. 1,375 people have been killed in Israel by Palestinian terrorism since 2000. 1,375. There barely exists a family in Israel who has not been personally touched by the death of a loved one in one of Israel's wars or terrorist incidents. Sensitive to anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism deeds and words? Yeah, you could say that. But you could also say, you know what? This didn't come from nowhere. I got a reason to be sensitive. I know my Jewish history. I know what's happened even today in America. And yeah, I keep my eyes open. I don't sit here secure. When personalities, international personalities like Roger Waters of Pink Floyd and actor Mel Gibson publicly spew anti-scientist and anti-Semitic rhetoric, the world and its Jews took note. Quick anecdote, I was talking to a dear lifelong friend and a colleague, not lifelong, we met in college, but became lifelong, and a colleague who was a wonderful guy. Sadly, he died a couple of years ago. He was in a rehab in California. And I talked to him, and I said, you know, I'm here, I love you, I'll do everything I can for you. And I said, did you see Passion of the Christ? I said, Mel Gibson? I said, I'd love to let him have it. You know what he said to me? I'll tell him, he's standing right here. I swear. He was in rehab too for the anger management problem. He was in the same place. They were all together. And other famous people were there too, including professional athletes. He told me, he said, they're all here, they're in my group. Waters defended the Palestinian cause. He refused to play in Israel. And you know what? He got others to do the same. There are people who were scheduled to take their tour through Israel. They canceled last minute. How do you think Israelis felt when they heard that their stop was the only one canceled when everyone else was playing the rest of the world and all other countries doing good and bad things? Gibson's rendition of the crucifixion of Jesus, entitled The Passion of the Christ, was viewed by many as anti-Semitic, and I agreed. I watched it. I wanted to get up in the middle of the theater and yell, what are the Jews doing? Are they crazy? In 2006, when Gibson exploded, you know what he said on the news? The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Wow, great. And this is a personality. What you and I say today, not a lot of people are going to hear, but when somebody like these guys speak in front of the world, the whole world hears. And people who don't know, don't have any background, knowledge, or sense, buy into it. Because they buy into anti-Semitism, because the world has taught them that for 2,000 years. Sensitive? Yeah, we get sensitive to this stuff. Again, what happens when it's one of us? Can we be critical of Israel without being called anti-Semitic or anti-Zionistic? You know, a lot of Jews refrain from publicly criticizing Israeli policies against the Palestinians for fears of being negatively labeled. But they argue that when they do so, they're speaking out for a better Israel and not because they hate Israel. Op-ed writer Lincoln Aftergood argues that American Jews are obligated to criticize Israel when she acts so morally against the Palestinians. You know what the latest issue is? The vaccines. There are people saying Israel has an obligation to vaccinate everyone in the Gaza-occupied territories. And of course, everyone's arguing back and forth. Who's responsible? Who should pay for it? Do I want to vaccine people who have bombs coming to kill me? The questions go on. My friends, I don't think it's our role to blindly support Israel. And I could argue that by saying at the outset, you know, with people we love, you don't blindly support them in everything they do. Someone you love says, you know what, I think I'm going to go overdose. Oh, I'm all behind you. Have a good day. No, we stand up. We say to our children, our spouses, our families, it's not the right way. We're not supposed to be arguing here. You're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be being better. They wouldn't say, they do. You hate me, right? How many parents had a kid who said, you hate me for what we do? We know nothing could be further than the truth. We value the love of Israel, but solidarity can also be expressed by trying to improve Israel and not ignoring the faults that every human being, every group, and every country has. Our vocal criticism is necessary to hold Israel accountable for its actions and to pressure the state into further considering the plight of the Palestinian people. My friends, for me, I think a lot of you know how I feel about Israel. But I also have stood before you in these high holidays and other times to talk about issues that aren't so clear and maybe not always justifiable. I tread as lightly as I can. I don't live in Israel. I don't live on the land. I don't have to worry about, like in May, sirens going off. Do I have access to a shelter? Will I make it in time? So I tread lightly and very humbly. And I don't want to inspire others to think that I hate Israel, and it's okay to hate Israel, because some people are just waiting for a reason to do so. But at the same time, what I really want is what I think all of us want. Not just peace for Jews, not just peace for Israel, peace for everybody. Because as they say, until there's peace for everyone, there won't be peace for anyone. And these conflicts will continue, and the cycle of violence will kill families and kill kids. In the end, I want to say with all humility and lightly, criticizing Israel does not make us traitors to our people. It just means that we want a better Israel. If I wanted to take all day, I could tell you a million examples of how Israel helps the Palestinians. A million. I'll give you one. When the skirmishes occur and the attacks, when they go to Israeli hospitals, Palestinians are admitted. Israel doesn't say these are for Jews only. You're the one who hurt us, who struck us. We're not treating you. And there is no deference. I have good friends who are doctors in Israel doing lots of different things, including triage and emergency. If a Palestinian comes in first and then a Jew, they don't treat the Jew first. They treat the first one that came in or the one that needs the treatment, regardless of whether they're Jewish or Palestinian. I'm really proud of that, and I hope you will be too. Writer Eli Hasselberg contends that when American Jews criticize Israel, the problem is that social media can pick up on it and get fueled to be more anti-Semitic. We feed into others. This may be reason enough to refrain from attacking Israel publicly. I think it is our role to defend Israel and to support her. And Rachel and all of you, I thank you for doing that so beautifully today. But it doesn't mean blind support. I don't cheer when Palestinians die. I don't celebrate when I see a dead Palestinian in the street. We defend Israel, but we defend everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to both criticize and praise the actions of its government, La Tova, for a better future. A lot of you know that 8 weeks ago I became a grandfather for the first time. Wow, that's a wild thing. I have a daughter and a son-in-law and a niece and a nephew and a lot of friends who live in Israel. So someone, can't necessarily say to me, well, sure, you don't care. I mean, you're not there. And I am there. What happens to my daughter, my granddaughter, my friends, every human being, I am there. And I've been in Israel. I traveled there during wartime. People told me, don't go. I said, I go no matter what. A lot of stories, just one. For all of you who've been in central Jerusalem at Ben Yehuda, Midrachov, the new marketplace, I remember during a war years ago, I forget which one, I've been there so many times during wars, I was standing there in the middle of Ben Yehuda, and you know that place is usually jammed with people? I was standing there, I looked around, I was all alone. I said, is this a good move? I said, if they're looking to hit somebody, they don't have any choices. It's going to be me. And then right away I went, sure, it's the best move in all. I'm doing it today. Someone else will stand here tomorrow. I'm really proud to be here, no matter what happens. No one's ever accused me of being anti-Zionistic, but I can also talk to you fairly about Israel. What she does right and what she does wrong, just like we can all talk about each other, what we do right and what we wrong, and what the world does right and what she does wrong. I am thrilled that Israel now has more peace treaties with Arab countries than ever before. It is a great sign for progress and for the future. Lately, the United Arab Emirates and Dubai, a couple of months ago when I told my friends I was coming to Israel to visit my granddaughter, you know what they said? Something I never heard before in my life. Good, you'll come here, we'll go to Dubai for 3 days. Where? It's unthinkable. And a lot of Arab countries, like the aforementioned Algeria, they don't allow people with Israeli or Jewish passports or Jews to come in. But the Emirates and Dubai have welcomed them, and Israelis flock because it's a sense of normalization. The world can go, we can go too. I used to think that making peace with these, yesterday I talked about think again, right? Here's one of my biggest thinks again recently, out of many. The book really moved me. I used to think that making peace with the Arab countries could never occur until we first made peace with the Palestinians. I thought again, you know what's happening? We're going to make peace with everybody, and the Palestinians will be the last one. And then there'll be more pressure on everybody to figure out how to do that, because it'll just be one last place to turn. I think that could happen. Now we turn to the issue of vulnerability for a moment. Jews have often felt vulnerable throughout history, and again, rightly so. How many places were we thrown out of? How many places were we not tolerated? How many places did we have to defend ourselves and try to survive? May 14th, 1948, how many countries faced a war of survival within hours of their establishment? Every war Israel fought could have been their last, because if she would have lost, that would have been it. No Arab country knows that. There are like 11, 12 Arab Muslim countries in this world in that area. None of them go to sleep at night thinking we might be done tomorrow. But Israel's prime minister, every night, probably says a prayer, I hope I wake up and Israel's still here tomorrow. Because there's only one Israel and one Jewish land, and she's never slept fitfully for 73 years. Vulnerable? Yeah, under the best circumstances. Remember the name Natan Sharansky, the great refusenik who was Anatoly, got out of Russia, great story. He perhaps said it best when he said the proven test of whether someone is anti-Zionistic or anti-Semitic can be measured by the 3 Ds. 3 Ds. Demonization, double standards, and delegitimization. What is demonization? When the Jewish state is being demonized, her actions are blown way out of proportion. She's not wrong, did something not right, should fix it. She's like the devil, as the world is bought into. And then this is suddenly not fair critique, but anti-Semitism. Do you know that Israelis have been labeled Nazis? Do you know that Israel has been labeled like killers of people like the Nazis, and Palestinian refugee camps have been called Auschwitz? My God, where's the comparison? Double standards. When criticism of Israel is applied selectively, when Israel is singled out by the United Nations for human rights abuses, while the behavior of known and major abusers such as China and Iran and Cuba and Syria are ignored, when Israel's Magin David Adom, her equivalent to the International Red Cross, is denied admission into the world group, that's anti-Semitism. Delegitimation is when Israel's fundamental right to exist is denied alone among all peoples in the world, and this is anti-Semitic. So we have to watch out for those 3 Ds. It's really a matter of depth. How far does it get carried? It's one thing to say, you know what, maybe Israel should relook at how they treat Palestinians. It's another thing to say, you know what, Israel has no right to exist. We could say that about every country in this world. Does anybody say America has no right to exist? Look what we do to people in the streets. Look what we do to black people. Look what we do to minorities. Look what we do. Anybody say the United States should no longer be here? No, we're trying to make it better. Same thing should be for Israel. So, to the original question as we start to wrap this up. Can you disagree with someone you love? We all know the answer is yes. But when we argue with a spouse or a parent or a child or someone we love, we're not trying to demonize them. We're not trying to tell our kids, you're the worst kids ever created in the world, and we wish you weren't here. We're upset. We want to help them. Same thing with everybody else. And so it could be with Jews, Judaism, and Israel. If we do so with sensitivity, without wild abandon, and without feeding the fuels of Jewish hatred in the world, we can, and perhaps it's our duty to do so in a responsible way. My friends, Israel's a beautiful country. She's given refuge and a permanent home to the Jewish people and so many others. If Israel had existed in the 1930s, the Holocaust would not have happened. But Israel, like you and me, like everyone, is not perfect. We're trying to become a more perfect union, so is Israel. So let's evaluate her. Let's speak honestly. Let's not be afraid to say maybe she can do better, this, that. And let's remember that we aren't anti-Zionists and anti-Semites. We just want to be fair, and we want to have a conversation where we can all become better. Look what we're saying today. Imagine if I applied this standard to all of us. You know, we are all demonized, we are all illegitimate, and we are all unfit to live this year because we all did something wrong last year. I don't think you come to services to listen to that too often. Instead, what is the clear message? We're not perfect. Guess what? We love you. God loves you. Love yourself. Try to be a little better. That's what we're here for. That's the message. So whether or not one agrees with what Ben and Jerry's did, holding Israel along with America and ourselves under a critical light doesn't mean that we're intolerant haters. I can argue both sides of the Ben and Jerry's thing. You know, you can argue both sides of a lot of things. But let's hope that she's trying to go for some higher values. Let's hope that Israel isn't singled out. Other countries should do the same. When it comes to love, it's often complicated, but it often means we just want others and ourselves to be the best we can be. So as the new year begins, I hope that all of us will love. Judaism is all about love. What do we sing today? V'ahavta. What does that mean? You shall love. What is the central part of the Torah? V'ahavta l'orecha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. I hope you'll love others. I hope you'll love Israel. I hope you'll love every country, every human being. And above all, I hope you love yourself. A favorite quote of many of mine is that if you don't love yourself, don't expect others to love you. They follow your suit. So find what is good about yourself while you're trying to become better and love yourself. I hope we will care enough to speak gently and positively about Israel and everything that goes wrong with others in our own lives. All of us have learned and grown because others have taken the time to show us when we are wrong and pointed us in the right direction because they cared. It's a complicated world, so let's try to be humble and brave enough to treat Israel, America, everyone and ourselves the way we want to be treated, with love and fairness on an eye on helping us to become better. In 5782, may we do all we can to strengthen and enrich the world and each of us, La Tova Bi'ava, let love pave the way for Israel, us, and the whole world, and make a better world. And let's believe we can get there because we're on that side. Amen. A lot of people are waiting to go back to Israel. We're waiting for the borders to open more, vaccines. It's been a complicated story, as you know. People could go there, but they had to be quarantined for a week or two. I have friends who lead Israel tour agencies, and they said, well, I'm going to bring a group here for 10 days when they have to be quarantined for 14. Good thinking, Lincoln. Yeah, I like the idea. But we're waiting to do it. I hope we all get there. A few people asked me yesterday, before you go, any chance we can go to Israel? And I said, you know what? If we get a group that wants to go in late December, I could see doing that. I'm planning on going to Israel then if the borders are open to visit Lucy. Little Lucy. She ain't so little anymore. 8 weeks ago, she was little. Now, a little bigger. Everybody's been through that, you know, kids and grandkids. If people are interested in going for Christmas, New Year's, it's a great time to go. School break. You never been? Let me know. I had a bunch of people that said yesterday, we really like to go. So if you're interested, if the borders are open, we can plan it and go as economically as possible and enjoy a great time together. Rachel, you might have to be our tour guide leader in December. I'm sure you wouldn't mind going back in December. So, okay, so there we go. We're going to turn to page 173 and invite you to rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tein gdula le'atzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzon, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam kalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol
Amonam.
V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'banim, l'fnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shmo echad.
Page 174 is the Mourner's Kaddish for those who would like to remain standing to say it. You can also say these words seated. Together we remember with love. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Bi'alama divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'gala uv'izman kari v'yimaru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach li'olam u'lomei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'miran bi'alama v'yimaru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. You may be seated. Good Yontif, everybody. A Chag Sameach, Shana Tova. We're being inscribed. Let's do what we can to be sealed for good. And we'll go through 10 days, then Sukkot, all good things through Simchat Torah. Today is Wednesday. Tomorrow morning we have Minyan on Zoom. I'll lead at 10. Friday night and Saturday morning here in Shul is the Drosner Bar Mitzvah. And Saturday, for those who want to join me on Zoom at 10 for Shabbat Shuvah, to celebrate one of the holiest Shabbatot of the year, I'll have a second service, which will be there for everybody. Sunday morning also at 10 o'clock a.m. first services, and then Kol Nidre and Yom Kippur next week. Wednesday night, Thursday, am I right? Yes. Yeah, Wednesday night, Thursday. Then Sukkot and all good things. So we hope you'll join us whenever you can. If you're here, great. If you're at home on live stream, great. It's just great to have all of you. For everybody on live stream, by the way, I always like to give a shout out. You're part of us. We thank you for being part of us, and we got a minion. You know, Zoom is really interesting. Halachic questions have come up. Can you count people on Zoom as a minion? Are they real people? Are they just images? What if they come and go? Really interesting questions, you know, because people like to have a minion, and they could ask, what is a minion? We have had beautiful minyanim. We thank all of you who've contributed. Chazan Greenfield, thanks for a beautiful, beautiful day today and yesterday. And thanks to Aaron for juggling all the new things, and to Val and Bert. And the last thank you, you know, is to all of you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to Jeff for the shofar blowing. I mean, I could go around mentioning everybody's names. You'll do something. So know that you're appreciated. You're part of a vibrant community. And thank you for making the minyan and bringing us a lot of strength. So we're going to sing L'Shana Tova. Turn to page 175. We're going to sing a beautiful song that we only hear a few days a year, so we'll sing it again and wish everybody a wonderful inscription and a sealing in the book of life. L'Shana Tova Tikatevu, L'Shana Tova Tikatevu, Tikatevu, V'Techateimu. Shana Tov, everybody. Be healthy, be safe, driving out. If you want, thank the security guards and the police. Let them feel appreciated for what they're doing for us. Do, 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 do.